We made it. End of 2018. Best albums of the year. Coming up right now. Let's go! Yeah, I'm gonna regret making this video as soon as I upload it. I know that's for sure. Alright, so I guess I'll quickly start running down what I think to be the top 30 of my favorite albums that have come out in 2018, 2018, the year of our Lord. Let's go. So for the first couple, I'm just gonna kind of save the album, give a couple tracks to listen to, what to look for when you're listening to the album, and then as we progress on and get more into the higher numbers there, I will be able to give you a more full description of why I love this album so much. Coming in number 30, Philadelphia's Megan Remy with her US Girls solo project with In a Poem Unlimited. Great indie rock, pop type feel to it. Some great tracks off of this include Rosebud, Ma, Time, and L Over. Overall, a great album to listen to, very fun, very political, especially in the state of 2018. Coming in at number 29, yet again another Philadelphia artist, Mr. Meek Mill with his comeback album Championships. Championships is a victory for Meek Mill as he is finally released from prison earlier in 2018. This is his comeback album. Fantastic tracks of this include the intro and What's Free, as well as Trauma. Awesome to see Meek Mill back, laying it down and creating some fantastic music. Number 28 sees the internet's hive mind. The group's leader, Sid, is most notably a former member of the Odd Future group. She has taken the internet and made it into her own project, with other albums that have come out in the past couple of years, but nothing has really panned out to be that great. However, with Hive Mind, the internet really comes into its own, developing a much more full sound, taking heavy use of their R&B influences as well as integrating with hip-hop. Some of the great tracks that come off of this album include Come Over or La-Di-Da, or even I could say Hold On or Roll. Overall, great album, worth a listen to. Oxnard by Anderson .Paak comes in at number 27. Anderson .Paak, multi-instrumentalist, mostly known for his drumming and his vocals, following up his 2016 breakthrough Malibu, and putting an end to the trilogy of his series between Venice, Malibu, and now Oxnard. Doesn't necessarily follow the same R&B path that Malibu did, changing up his sound a lot, especially due to the influences of Dr. Dre being hovering over his shoulder for the majority of this album. That being said, still a great album. Doesn't live up to Malibu in my opinion, but Oxnard is still good. And I'm excited to see what Anderson .Paak has to offer in the future. Some great tracks off this include Tints featuring Kendrick Lamar, Who Are You? Brother's Keeper with Pusha T is another fantastic track off of this thing, and Cheers with Q-Tip. And although Oxnard did not quite live up to the hype that I had for it, still turned out to be a great project. Travis Scott's Astroworld comes in at number 26. Astroworld has been hyped up for years and years and years upon its final release. Carousel featuring Frank Ocean is a fantastic track. Stargazing, the intro, is beautiful, melodic, entrancing, as well as other good tracks such as Yosemite. And no, I'm not a fan of Sicko Mode, and I'll get to that in another video, but we'll leave it there. At number 25, we see 2012 to 2017 selected works for Against All Logic. Against All Logic is an electronic artist. This is more or less a compilation of his work over the past couple of years, and I'm very glad this project was put out because there are some great tracks off of this. City Fade, Know You, I Never Dream, and Hopeless. Overall, one of the better electronic albums to come out of 2018, and if you're into that type of music, definitely give this album a listen to. Coming in at number 24, it's Oliver Coates with Shelley's on Zenn-La. Very strange and somewhat abstract and experimental electronic music. If you saw this guy live, he opened up for Tom York, and that's kind of where I found him from, and it's a really good album. It's one of those pieces that you definitely need to listen to in full to truly understand and truly appreciate. But yeah, Shelley's on Zenn-La, Oliver Coates, solid album if you're looking for something more electronic, a little bit more entrancing, and mostly instrumentals. Coming in at number 23 on our best albums of 2018 list, we have the Arctic Monkeys' Tranquility based Hotel and Casino. Our music producer for the show, Spencer Norris, this is actually his favorite album of the year. It didn't quite do that much for me, but it still made it on this list because it is a solid album. It's hard being one of the best rock bands at the time and being almost at the top of your game, especially following 2013's AM. But they still come back, lay down some awesome tracks, extremely abstract and experimental, most of which don't necessarily make sense as far as lyrically, but there's still some fun tunes that have come out of it, 4 out of 5 being one of them. Star Treatment is another lyrically weird and off song, but it still kind of works. Now Only by Mount Eerie comes in at number 22. Now Only is the follow-up to the 2017 incredibly amazing but depressing and dismal album A Crow Looked at Me. Phil Everome comes into this album still thinking about the death of his wife. And while it is not as intoxicatingly depressing as A Crow Looked at Me, Now Only definitely has its moments of sadness. But they're able to turn around in a way that still make you feel hopeful about life. The title track for Now Only is one of the best tracks of the year in my opinion. It deals with death in a very comical but very real and understandable way. It doesn't take many odd concepts or crazy themes to get its point across. Dirty Computer by Janelle Monae comes in at number 21 on this list. Dirty Computer has become a pop and R&B anthem throughout this year. And I'll admit, when I first heard this album, I didn't love it. I didn't necessarily see the entire appeal to it. But as I've listened to it more and more, I've definitely gained an appreciation for this album. One of our viewers, Peter Macaretta, says that this is his favorite album of 2018. And I can understand why. There are some fantastic cuts off this thing. Django Jane is one of my favorite songs of the year. And this album as a whole represents female empowerment in such a fantastic way. Coming in at number 20 is Popular Fiction by Gold Connections. Gold Connections coming out of Virginia, an alternative indie rock group. I've been looking forward to this project for a little while now, especially after they dropped their Gold Connections EP in 2017. Some great tracks off this include Bad Intentions with a very Bob Dylan feel to it, or the indie rock anthem of Icarus, and even other cuts as the title track Popular Fiction or New Religion. It's a very fun alternative indie listen between the lyrics, the sounds, the production, the instrumentals. I think it's a very well put together album, and they deserve much more recognition than they are currently getting. Coming in at number 19, we find Ski Mask, The Slump Gods Beware the Book of Eli. I can't express how much I love this album. Like, obviously it's not number 1 on this list, but my goodness, I love this album so much. I find myself listening to it on repeat. This is mumble rap at its funniest, most hilarious, and probably its best production-wise. I thoroughly enjoyed this album. I was not entirely pleased with Stokely that just recently came out. I think there are a couple good cuts off of that, but not in comparison to Beware the Book of Eli. Some great tracks such as the opening track Lost Soul, which is literally just Ski Mask rapping about drowning somebody in a sea of lost souls. Extremely absurd mumble rap, but it is just so good. Yeah, I would definitely say that Stokely is one of my most disappointing albums of 2018 just because I really thought that he could live up to the hype of Beware the Book of Eli. But overall, I can't complain. I still have that album to listen to again and again and again for the rest of eternity until I'm 80 and still listening to mumble rap. Speaking of rap, we have Pusha T's Daytona coming in at number 18. Daytona kicked off the series of Good Fridays where Kanye West would come in with his newly produced 7-track albums and drop them on Good Music. Daytona gave us some fantastic tracks such as If You Know You Know or Santeria. The very well lyrically constructed What Would Meek Do featuring Kanye West, and the closing diss track Infrared. I'll never forget listening to this album for the first time too because I was going to bed, it was late at night, I had to wake up earlier the next morning, but I wanted to listen to What Would Meek Do because I was extremely interested by the title. And I remember listening to it, and then all of a sudden I looked down at my phone to see what song's playing, and Infrared was on. And at that moment, it hit to me that Kanye West is back in full production form, making seamless transitions from tracks, cohesively bonding albums together. And I ended up staying up the rest of the night just listening to that album because it was so enthralling. But yeah, if you haven't heard Daytona yet, you're missing out. Go check it out. Pusha T lays it down on this album. At number 17, we see Year of the Snitch by Death Grips. It's definitely not my favorite Death Grips album. The Money Store will always have that place in my heart. But there's still some great tracks off of this thing, between Death Grips is Online, Black Paint. I think that Death Grips made a great progression into 2018, especially with the soundscape of this album. And I think that it'll go down as one of their better albums in their discography for sure. Number 16 sees Mr. Father John Misty coming in with God's Favorite Customer. I was honestly kind of surprised that he put out an album this year, considering the success of Pure Comedy last year. Despite all of this, Father John Misty still comes back this year with this album that is on still the same caliber as Pure Comedy. Great tracks such as Mr. Tillman, God's Favorite Customer, Disappointing Diamonds are the rarest of them all, or even Please Don't Die. Overall, fantastic alternative rock album. Again, Father John Misty laying down some wisdom in his lyrics. And while political, I would not say it's as political as Pure Comedy. For the big 1-5, we have here Iridescence by Brockhampton. Amidst various delays of different projects and different albums throughout the year, finally, Brockhampton was able to put out a full-length LP in Iridescence. It is their major record label debut, being on RCA. And while I don't necessarily think that it lived up track-wise to their other projects, I think that as a cohesive piece, this is probably their best work so far. I love the flow of the album, the production is super well done. I'm glad to finally see some features on the tracks. Whether it be features on tracks such as Tanya, or even the opening track New Orleans. And I was extremely worried to see where this group would go without Amir. I mean, he was probably their best hip-hop backbone that the group had to offer. But Don, Joba, Matt, Kevin, and the rest of the boys still came in and really gave it to us. I don't think Iridescence is what anybody was looking for, but I think it's something that we all needed. Some fantastic cuts off here include New Orleans with Jaden Smith, Berlin, Where the Cash At, Jovert, San Marcos, and Wait. I think there were a couple disposable tracks on this LP, but I can pretty much get over that, especially considering the production. I mean, have you even heard the transition between New Orleans and Thug Life? Because if you haven't, whew, you're missing out. At number 14, we've got Mr. Vince Staples of Long Beach with FM. A bit of a surprise project that just kind of dropped out of nowhere. And it also was fairly short. If I'm not mistaken, it was like 21 minutes or something like that. And at first I thought it was an EP. But after listening to it, I realized how dense and how thorough this album actually is. Reminding me a lot of the Prima Donna days for Vince. And Kenny Beats comes in with head of production and just kills it, as he's been killing it pretty much all year, but especially on this project. Great tracks include Feels Like Summer, Outside, Don't Get Chipped, and Fun. I think this was a fantastic concept album that Vince really came through with and thoroughly delivered on. And if you haven't heard it yet, go listen to it. Again, very short listen, but a very fun listen. My only complaint is, I wish it came out in the beginning of the summer, because it would have been a great summer album. Number 13, we've got Yeh Kanye West, one of the 7 tracks that he put out this year. Fantastic. Opening up with the spoken word, I thought about Killing You. Moving into Yikes. And then other tracks as such as All Mine or the fantastic Ghost Town. And ending on such a touching track with Violent Crimes. Kanye finally came into an album and really accepted who he is and dove deeper into his own psyche in ways that we truly haven't seen before. Not saying that Kanye isn't an open guy, because he obviously is on other projects, but for some reason Ye felt like a personal statement that he wrote to his fans. And I will never get over the chorus of Ghost Town. It's so good! And to think that he wrote this album in almost, I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks if I'm not mistaken. Even coming and taking the picture for the cover art the day of the release. You can kind of tell that it does feel rushed at times, but overall, you wouldn't really think twice about it, especially as a casual listener. Makes me very excited to see what Yandhi will be whenever we get it. At number 12, we've got Blood Orange, Negro Swan. Woo! Fantastic R&B hip-hop album. Blood Orange truly makes a statement with this LP. Some of the greatest tracks of 2018 have come off of this album, whether they be Charcoal Baby, Orlando, Vulture Baby, Chewing Gum, and overall making a very fun, lo-fi, R&B type album. I think it's definitely worth a listen and almost a necessary listen for the 2018 albums that have come out. Can't speak highly enough about this LP. At number 11, it is Noname's Room 25. Noname is back after her 2016 mixtape Telephone. I thoroughly enjoyed Telephone. I think that it was one of the best mixtapes / albums to come out in 2016. And now Room 25 coming in and blowing that out of the water. Room 25 offers the brilliant blaxploitation song, as well as Window, Don't Forget About Me, Noname. Overall, another very condensed album that is just bursting with colorful noises, bass. The poetry that Noname has written reminds me so much of the early days of Patti Smith in a way, just in a 2018 form. Hopefully this Chicago rapper will get the recognition that she deserves because my god is she good. The flow of blaxploitation rivals some of the best hip-hop artists to date. So yes, Room 25 gets the double thumbs up from me. And coming in at number 10, we have Wide Awake by Parquet Courts. Wide Awake is another very fun, very uppity, bouncy indie rock album featuring the awesome opening track Total Football, which has my favorite ending lyrics of any song this year. Just go and read the last 2 lines and you'll see why this proud Eagles fan is happy to see those words in a song. But other great tracks off this include Freebird 2, the self-titled Wide Awake, as well as Before the Water Gets Too High or Mardi Gras Beads. Overall, I was extremely pleased with this album. Very happy to see Parquet Courts come back with such a bursting energy and very clean and polished production. Moving right along, at number 9 we have Denzel Curry's Taboo. Denzel Curry makes a statement off his new LP, basically saying that he is here and he is here to stay. And I am so happy about that. I remember seeing Denzel back in 2015 or 2016 at the Made in America Festival in Philadelphia. I remember going just to kind of see Ultimate simply for the meme aspect of it. But after watching him perform, I was blown away. Not because of how fun he was or how energetic, but about 2 minutes into his set, his laptop completely stopped working. But instead of just simply canceling the rest of his set, he went and did the rest of it a cappella until they finally got the laptop fixed with like 5 minutes remaining in the set. And I always remember being so blown away that this guy was still able to come back and show off his true artistry. That this guy is not messing around and that he's not just a one-hit wonder. And I'm so glad to finally see an album by him, not saying that Imperial was bad, but coming in with Taboo and bringing a fresh sound and some awesome tracks. Whether it be the opening track Taboo, or Black Balloons, Cloud Cobain, Switch It Up, which is definitely one of the more popular songs to come off of it, but for a good reason, and Vengeance featuring Zilliqa Me and JPEGMAFIA. Overall, Taboo, definitely one of the best projects of 2018, and I'm so glad that Denzel Curry was able to make this. Very excited to see what else he has in store for us in the future. Coming in number 8, we have Daughters, You Won't Get What You Want. It's an industrial rock album, following very heavily into the post-rock kind of theme and sound. Very sharp and shearing noises on this album. Extremely dark lyrically and almost overpowering on top of you. This album is an experience, to say the least. Some of the best tracks include City Song or Ocean Song, as well as Less Sex and Long Roads, No Turns. This is probably a tougher listen for most people out there, and I can't say I don't agree with that. But however, upon my second listen, I instantly fell in love with this album. I realized why so many critics across the board were giving this such great positive review. The lyrics are very dynamic, and that also lends into the construction of the songs being so dynamic and multi-purposed. Overall, fantastic record. If you're ever interested in industrial rock, definitely give this a listen. Another rock album coming in here at number 7 is Sleep's The Sciences. Sleep, most notably for their stoner metal, stoner rock sound. They came back this year with a surprise LP dropping on 4/20 on Third Man Records. I'd actually not really been aware of Sleep until this point, and I'm so grateful that they put this album out because I've been able to experience all the other works that they have put out too. Not to undermine The Sciences in any way, because it is a fantastic record. Long, drawn out, building up songs, very heavy, and very gritty. And yet again, just like the Daughters album, I would say that the science is as an experience. It's one of those things you really have to listen to truly understand. But yes, it does follow in suit of the normal stoner rock kind of sound. Long, drawn out, wailing guitar riffs, and heavily pounding drums. One of my favorite tracks off this is Marijuana's theme. It's the second track if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, yet again, something that you just really have to experience to kind of understand, and it's definitely worth a listen to regardless. And at number 6 we have Kamasi Washington's Heaven and Earth. This is another expansively large double LP from the jazz legend Kamasi Washington, most notably for doing tons of work with Kendrick Lamar on To Pimp a Butterfly. Washington's last full-length LP, The Epic, is a sprawling 2.5 to 3 hours long. And this new Heaven and Earth is no shortcut either. This jazz fusion creates these long and drawn out but extremely entertaining and fulfilling tracks. Whether it be tracks such as Fists of Fury or Connections, even the Space Traveler's Lullaby, or Street Fighter Moss. A brace of horns constantly take over tracks, as well as solos that bounce off the wall. Kamasi Washington really did it this time with Heaven and Earth. At number 5 we have Idol's new album, Joy as an Act of Resistance. This post-rock, post-punk album came out in August of this year, and I just recently found it. People have been touting this album since its release, but I never got around to hearing it until about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I was blown away just as most people were. Heavy and crunchy guitars, baffling basses, and just repetition on drums give this album an awesome sound to it. Not to mention heavily politically charged lyrics, as well as themes of false masculinity. Colossus feels like 2 tracks stitched together to bring about this amazing crescendo of noise. Talking again heavily about false masculinity and what it takes to be a man. Following up with Never Fight a Man with a Perm is another fantastic track off of this LP. I'm Scum and Danny Nedelko also are some fantastic tracks, as well as Television, June, and Cry to Me. Actually, basically the more and more I think about it, all 12 of the tracks off of this 42-minute album are fantastic. Each track individually adds so much to the overall theme of this album, developing sound and bringing about new ideas both lyrically and musically the entire way through. If you're looking for a new rock album to listen to that came out in 2018, I would definitely recommend Joy as an Act of Resistance, as Idols truly kills it on this one. At number 4, we have the recently released Earl Sweatshirt album, Some Rap Songs. This is follow-up to the 2015 album that he put out, I Don't Go Outside. Many people were expecting a very depressing album to come out of Earl this year, especially following all of the stuff that he has been through recently, whether it be the passing of his father. And I must admit, Earl has kind of fallen off in the past couple of years. He hasn't put out much music, and really only featuring in the Danny Brown track Really Dough, and then earlier this year being in that Vince Staples album with the Earl Sweatshirt interlude. But when he started releasing the new singles for this album, Nowhere to Go and The Mint, I was hyped. And he really delivers on this LP, even though it is only 24 minutes long, if I'm not mistaken. And yet again, another album this year that has come out that is thoroughly deep, condensed, tight, abstract. And the best part about this album is that you can pretty easily just replay this and still get the same experience that you got from the first time that you heard it. Or gain something more for that matter. Earl knocks it out of the park with this album, even though it doesn't have really any standout singles that could be radio hits. I think that his use of experimental rap is really one of the best things that 2018 has given us, boosting this experimental rap into the mainstream, and I think that Earl only adds to that. I don't see some rap songs gaining too much mainstream success, but I find that his hardcore fans or fans of music in general will thoroughly enjoy this project. Earl lays down some of the best lyrics that he's ever put out, especially on the track The Mint. And this is again one of those albums that you truly have to go through and listen song by song and just listen through the entirety of the LP to really understand what Earl is getting at here. It's also the best way to experience this album in general, in my opinion. But some great tracks include Red Water, Nowhere to Go, On the Way, The Mint, Playing Possum, Peanut, and Riot. All of these tracks are definitely the best ones that have come off of some rap songs. But again, like I said, listen to the entire thing to truly understand and truly appreciate all that Earl has done. We've finally made it to the top 3 albums of 2018, so let's get into it. Ooh. Oh God, kill me. It's been 2.5 hours of recording. Shoot me. Coming in at number 3, we've got ourselves JPEGMAFIA with his Veteran LP. Veteran is an experimental hip-hop album by Peggy himself. And it is not only an experimental hip-hop album, it is a very good experimental hip-hop album. This album does a great job of putting a new spin on what is possible in the hip-hop genre, especially when it comes to instrumentation and voice modulation. Peggy lays down some killer tracks on this thing that could potentially be mainstream hits, while also others just being great underground songs. This album is consistent in every which way, shape, and form, except for the fact that it's not consistent. I know that sounds like a paradox there, but I mean that. It's constantly changing things up and taking what you would think to be the norm and expanding that and manipulating that into something brand new. And that is constant throughout the entire album. Peggy changes things up throughout this entire LP, whether it be the soundscape, the noise, the instrumentation, the sampling, his flows itself, and the lyrics. While the main theme of this album definitely revolves around politics, Peggy still diverges and makes other great points throughout this LP using funny lyricism. Baby I'm Bleeding is one of the best tracks of the year, coming out with this bouncy and bubbling beat that constantly boils over, while Peggy begins coming in just screaming into the microphone, giving it all that he's got. Peggy has definitely blown up throughout the year, and I'm so happy to see that. He deserves all of the recognition that he's getting, and even more. I hope Peggy can come out with a new album in 2019, and if he doesn't, I'm honestly okay with that, because I want him to be able to come back and make an album better than Veteran, which is already an incredibly hard feat to do. Number 2. Kanye West, Kid Cudi, Kids See Ghosts, self-titled. Wow, what a good record! What a fantastic record! Kanye and Cudi are always the frontrunners when it comes to new ideas and new topics in rap music, but never have they made something this good. Kids See Ghosts is a whirlwind of 23 minutes and 7 tracks, constantly coming at you with new ideas, new sounds, and overall just an incredible atmosphere. From the opening track of Feel the Love featuring Pusha T and Kanye's it is full of energy, constantly bumping back and forth through the entire thing. Beat and production-wise, it is perfect, as well as Cudi's vocals, Pusha T's feature, and Kanye's just random screaming. Honestly, it makes the whole song even better. And then on other tracks such as Fourth Dimension, a hilarious track all about sex. Kanye comes in and does what Kanye has to do. He makes funny references. He has beautiful lyrics that are also kind of disgusting at the exact same time. From a lyrical standpoint, this album is amazing, constantly finding deeper meanings in the words that are being said. Reborn is all about finding yourself and lifting yourself up and really remolding who you want to be by your own eyes and what you see in the world. And this is probably one of my favorite lyrics of the year coming off of this track, saying, this is Kanye saying this, "I was off the chain, I was often drained, I was off the meds, I was called insane. What an awesome thing, engulfed in shame. I want all the rain, I want all the pain, I want all the smoke, I want all the blame. Cardio audio, let me jog your brain." Seriously, some of the best lyrics of the entire year, just sitting right there in that song, and the entire album in general. As well as tracks like Cudi Montage, with an awesome use of a Kurt Cobain sample. I can't talk highly enough about this album. It seriously is, if not my favorite Kanye project, definitely one of my top 2 or 3. I mean, I can't get over how amazing this album turned out, and it just makes me want more and more to see what Kids See Ghosts can possibly do. But if you haven't heard it, just honestly, just stop this video right now. Don't even watch number 1. Just go listen to that album and then come back. That's what you should do. Before we get to number 1, I want to do a couple honorable mentions as well as some dishonorable mentions for Album of the Year. Honorable mentions include Swimming by Mac Miller, as listener Tim Price points out that is his favorite album of the year. Isolation by Kali Uchis is another fantastic pop and R&B record that came out this year. And finally, Boarding House Reach by Jack White, another great outing from the fantastic and influential Mr. Jack White. However, now to get back into things, our number 1 record of the year is... The number 1 record of 2018 is, of course, Car Seat Headrest, Twin Fantasy. When I first heard they're gonna re-release this album, I simply couldn't believe it. It is one of my favorite albums of all time, at least the 2011 edition is. And I was happy but worried at the exact same time. Obviously there are a ton of improvements that they could make on the original simply because of the lo-fi aspect of it all, as well as some questionable construction of the tracks themselves. But Will Toledo and the boys came together, really did it this time. So many amazing tracks off this thing, starting off with Beach, Life, and Death, a 13-minute sprawling 3-act song, constantly giving you more and more as you listen to it. I already loved the 2011 version, but the extra lyrics added onto this, as well as the polished production, just add to the overall aesthetic that this album has to offer. As well as some great redone tracks, especially in Bodies. Bodies on the original album was not that good. It's nothing compared to what it is now. This hard drum beat, as well as the synthetic drum going back and forth in the beginning, opening it up into this overtly danceable song that you just want to get up and constantly move your feet to. Besides Bodies, I think the best overall improvement on this album has to be on High to Death. The original album was, it was an okay song. It had some great lyrics, but the instrumentals were not that hot. However, the reworked 2018 version is simply beautiful. Between Will's vocals seeming so subtle and depressed, but at the end of the song bringing together this whirlwind. It talks about how the wallpaper moved around him, and it really feels like it. They did a fantastic job producing, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Will did most of the production on this album himself. I know that it took 8 months just simply to get the drum beats correctly on the entire thing. That attention to detail on this album really shows. This album is much more popular than Teens of Denial, and is much more popular than the 2011 version of it, but I just simply can't stop listening to it. And of course, Famous Prophet Stars at the end of this album, I believe now is 16 minutes long, which is almost not long enough, to be completely honest. Just that track is so incredible. And the lyrics in this entire thing are just fantastic. Giving the story about a man who falls in love with another man, and then it just doesn't necessarily work out, but he has these fantasies that it does work out, and it's this whole thing. You gotta listen to it to experience it. But I'm so glad this album came out. Really happy they redid it. I was so worried at first, but my god, I couldn't be happier with this. So, Will, thank you for this. Car Seat Headrest, thank you for this. And all the other artists, thank you. Thank you for making 2018 an awesome year for music. Definitely some forgettable moments, but for the most part, some awesome moments. But now I want to know, what is your album of the year? Make sure to leave it in the comment section below so I can see whether your opinion is right or wrong. And until then, make sure to keep it forever spinning, and happy listening.